Today's daf is Memches, and we start from the Mishnah. Shalosh Asheroshem, there are three categories of an Asherah. So our sugya today is the sugya of Asherah. And by way of introduction, let's just mention that there are a number of issues with regard to the Asherah tree. One of the issues is, do we assume that they bury something at the bottom of the tree, at the base of the tree, which is called takroves Avoda Zara? And therefore, when you walk under the tree and you're under the foliage of the tree, that might generate tumah. Another issue with regard to the Asherah tree is, in general, what about the shade of the foliage as it extends beyond the foliage, right? Because when the sun is setting or early in the morning, the shade will project even beyond the foliage, and whether or not that's considered a violation of Isra or no. Perhaps the most fundamental issue with regard to the Asherah tree is what part of the tree has to be destroyed and is also, is it the base of the tree and the tree? Is it only the tree? What's the status of the leaves of the tree? Uh, does it depend upon whether or not the original planting of the Asherah tree was for the purpose of Avodah Zarah? These are all the myriad of issues with regard to the Asherah tree. But now we have in our Mishnah three categories. Number one, and this is the most machmir category, is Elon Shenito Mitchilu L'Shem Avodas Kocham. So from the get-go, this tree was planted for the purpose of idolatry. Harezu Asura, and you're not allowed to have any benefit from this tree. It's Asur Ba'Noah. The only possibility of being Matir Hanoah would be if a guy comes along and he's Mevatel the tree. A Jew, on the other hand, cannot be Mevatel, and an Asherah tree that's owned by a Jew doesn't lend itself to Bittul in any event. Now we get to the second category, which is a little bit less severe, and that is Gido Upislo L'Shem Avodas Kochov. Now we're talking about the case where he takes off some of the trimmings of the tree, or he prunes the tree. All these like growths from the tree, and they were done for the sake of idol worship. Is then the Mishnah Paskins Hichlif. Now, the word Hichlif, which in modern Hebrew means to exchange something, but in Mishnaic Hebrew, the word Hichlif means to grow. And if all these trimmings and prunings grow, then notel masha Hichlif, then the tree itself is permitted, and that which has to be removed, all these trimmings and anything that grew from the tree, that's prohibited. The third category in the Mishnah is Hemi Tachteo Avodas Kochom Nitola. Let's say he put an idol underneath the tree or at the foot of the tree on a temporary basis, meaning his intention is to remove it. So it's only there temporarily. Harezu Muteres, then the tree itself is mutter. The Gemara quotes Amri de Berav Yanai, and this is going to severely limit the prohibition of these new growths that grow out of the tree. V'hushe hivrich v'hirkiv begufo shel Elon. What are these growths that come out of the tree? So Rav Yanai limits it to the case of a mavrich or a markiv. What's the difference between a mavrich and a markiv? So that mavrich is when you take a branch of the tree and you curve it over, you bend it over, and you put it into the ground, and it comes up from the ground. And markiv means simply grafting. So you took, let's say, an outgrowth of this Asherah tree, you grafted that outgrowth after you cut it off onto another tree. So this itself, says Rav Yanai, is going to severely limit the second category that we have in our Mishnah regarding these growths that come out of the tree. Now, if the change here uh, is not up to that level of grafting, then the new growths would not be forbidden. So the Gemara asks the following question. V'anan, if you take a look at the language of the Mishnah, it says Gido upislo. Tanan, that's what it says in our Mishnah. So he pruned the tree, he trimmed the tree, he removed whatever grows from the tree, and he really didn't make any major change from the tree. And yet, anything that grows from the tree is also. And this is a contradiction against Rabbi Yanai, because Debei Rabbi Yanai was of the opinion that you need a major change in order to forbid the growths from the tree. Something like Markiv and Mavrich. He points out here that if the growth from the grafted branch, that's prohibited, because we view them as having been planted from the beginning for idolatry purposes. Otherwise, they would be permitted. And yet our Mishnah seems to say that, any growth from the tree is prohibited. Whereas Rabbi Yanai implies that if it's not a major change, then it's mutter. So at this point, the Gemara goes back to the drawing board to reinterpret Rabbi Yanai. El ki itmar de Rabbi Yanai le'inyan bittul itmar. And Rabbi Yanai is establishing the limits of bittul. When does nullification is valid? The afal gav de hirki vehivrich begufo shel ilon ki notal bashe hichliv shaper damu. So in other words, even though he did this grafting and he made a major change in the tree itself, nevertheless, when he removes this growth from the tree, shaper dummy. What does that mean, shaper dummy? It's okay. Ma'odetem, I would have thought that keva de hivrich v'hirkiv begufo shel ilon is ki ilon sheneto mitchila dummy v'litzar kula kamashmala. I would have thought that grafting the tree, that means he made a major change in the tree. I mean, it was here, and now it's there. And if that be the case, since it's a major change in the tree, therefore, the logic apparently dictates that the tree was planted from the beginning for the purpose of idolatry. In other words, you would have said that, wait a minute, maybe if it's Herkiv and so forth, let's say it's grafted onto an Asherah tree, that it still is a foreign element, and it's not planted from the beginning for the purpose of the Asherah tree as the Asherah tree itself. And what you might suggest is that if he grafted it onto the tree, now it becomes part of the tree. And just like the tree itself was originally planted for the purpose of idolatry, so too that which he grafts onto the tree should be prohibited. Kamash Malan, and Rabbi Yanai wants to be machadish to us that that which he grafted onto the tree is still mutter. It's only that which grows out of the tree that becomes us. Amar Shmuel Mishtachvel Elon. As a general rule, once you worship a tree, Tosefte Asura, any growth that comes out of the tree that was worshipped is prohibited. Masiv Rabbi Elazar raises the following objection from our Mishnah. It says, Gido upislo avodas kochavim vehichlif, notel mashe hichlif. In other words, why are you telling me, Shmuel, that all the additional growth of some tree that was worshipped is asur? That's not so. Our Mishnah says, notel mashe hichlif. In other words, he could just simply remove that which grew. Like, for example, if he prunes the tree, and the tree itself is mutter. The implication here that there is a situation where it's asur, gido pislo in. If he prunes the tree or trims the tree, the additional growth is prohibited, but lo gido pislo lo. But if he didn't prune it or he didn't trim it, then the additional growths are not prohibited, where Shmuel made an absolute statement that once the tree is worshipped, even if the tree was not pruned or trimmed, any new growth is forbidden. Our Mishnah seems to assume that the only thing that's forbidden is the cases of Gido upislo. But if it's not up to that level of Gido upislo, it's just a small, insignificant growth, then it's mutter. Omlecha Shmuel, Hamani, the author of our Mishnah, is Rabbanan. Rabbanan of the opinion that if, when he planted the tree, he did not have in mind for Avoda Zara, and later on he decides to worship the tree, then the tree is mutter. Shmuel, on the other hand, the Omer, he was standing on the shoulders of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, the Omer who holds, Elon Shenetol of Asof Avodo also. A tree was planted, even though he had no intention to worship, and later on he worshipped it, it's forbidden. Maskef lo Rav Ashi, Mimai de Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbana b'tosefta pligi. Okay, now this part of the sugya that we're about to learn is very challenging, but we'll try to do the best we can. And we're trying to understand why Rav Ashi objects to the interpretation that we gave of the machlokes between Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi. Mimai, how do you know that Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbanan b'tosefes pligi, they're arguing about the additional growth? And that means that after he worshipped the tree grew. And the machlokas is whether that additional growth likewise has the status of the Isra Avodah Zarah or not. Dilma, perhaps, Tosefes Divriyakol Osa. Everybody agrees unanimously that that which grows after the worship of the tree is prohibited. But what is the subject of the machlokas between Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, and the Rabbanim? Bikaro pligi. They're arguing about that part of the tree that existed originally before it was worshipped. The Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Savar Ikro Nami Asur. The original part of the tree is also prohibited, even though the tree was not planted for the sake of idolatry. D'chsiv Ashreim Tisrafu Ba'esh. The Torah requires that we take the Asherah tree and we burn it. That means the entire tree is burnt. Even that part of the tree, which was original and did not exist at the time of the Hashtachavah. Rabbanan Savri, Ikre, Elon, Shari. Right, that part of the original tree before it was worshipped is mutter, d'chsiv Ashreim Tegadeu. Right, Tegadeu means you cut down the Asherah tree. And that means that part of the tree, at the base of the tree, is left intact. And it's mutter. Ezu Elon Shegiduo Asur V'ikro Shari. Why would we say that the main base of the tree is mutter, and only that which you cut out of the tree is osur. It has to be a case of heavy omer ilon sheditol basof avodah, that the original planting of the tree was not for the sake of avodah zarah. Later on, he decided to worship it, and that original part of the tree before it was worshipped is mutter. The part of the tree that grew later, it's already been worshipped, and it's avodah zarah, is also, it has to be removed. Okay, now we have to take a deep breath, and we'll try to get through the next piece of Gemara. V'chi tema. Now the Gemara wants to suggest and then reject a rebuttal to Rav Ashi. Hachi. Why don't we explain that Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda holds, like you said, that even the ikar of the tree is osur, and this despite the fact that the tree was planted without any intention for avodah zarah, and therefore when it says ashereim tegadeun, it means that the original part of the tree should be mutter, right? And that was the basis for the Rabbanon's kula. Epoch Rabbanon lid Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. We could just simply do an epoch. And that which we originally thought was the Rabbanon, we're going to switch over to Rabbi Yossi, and that which and vice versa. Lid Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanon. So this is all based on the sugya that we learned back on Daf Mem Hey. Trouble is that was, I think, Tisha B'Av. And there we said that Rabbi Yossi, who holds that even though the tree was planted not for purpose of idolatry, nevertheless after it's worshipped is osur, he derived that conclusion from Ashreihem to Gadeim. Nowhere do we find that Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda mentions the pasuk Ashreihem Tisrufu Beish, implying that the entire tree, even the base of the tree, is osur, but rather from the pasuk Ashreihem to Gadeim, which applies that the base of the tree is mutter. Now, Rav Ashi is rejecting that explanation that was given earlier on Daf Mem Heyam and Beis, and he is saying that Rabbi Yossi derives his conclusion from Vashreim Tisrufum Beish. Not like the Gemara said that Rabbi Yossi derived his conclusion from Tegadeim, but rather from Tisrufum Beish. Whereas the Rabbanon, they agree that Tisrufun means that if the tree was planted for Avodah Zarah, then we have to destroy the entire tree. It's all prohibited. What are they going to do with the pasuk Tegadeun? And that the Gemara says back on Daf Mem Hey is used for if you recall, the sequence of when we have to uproot Avodah Zarah after Kibush Eretz Yisrael. According to Rav Ashi, we have to switch it around because it's the Rabbanon who are going to use these two psukim of Ashreim Tisrufun and Tegadeun for two categories of trees. Rav Yossi derives two prohibitions from the pasuk Tisrufun. He's left with the extra pasuk Tegadeun, and he's going to use it to determine the sequence of when we have to destroy the trees, namely after Kibush Eretz Yisrael. So at this point in the Gemara is basically challenging Rav Ashi's interpretation based on the Gemara back on Daf Mem Hey. So, for example, what would be the status of an Asherah tree that became an Asherah tree subsequently when he worshipped it, but it was not planted as such? Do we have to destroy the base of the tree? And if, according to Rav Ashi, Rav Yossi, Rav Yehuda is deriving two conclusions from two psukim, therefore he may hold that even though the tree was not planted with the intention for Avoda Zara, the original part of the tree would still be awesome. Whereas the Rabbanan, according to Rav Ashi, are using the pasuk Tigadeun to prove that in a case where you didn't plant it for Avodah Zarah, the base of the tree, the original part of the tree, is mutter. So the Gemara now challenges Rav Ashi in his interpretation of Machlokes between the Rabbanan and Rav Yossi. Im Kain, Gido Pislo Mand Katonila. Our Mishnah doesn't work out neither with the Rabbanan nor with Rav Yossi. The Mishnah establishes that if he prunes or trims the tree, then the Tosefta, that which is additionally grown, is forbidden, implying that if the tree was not pruned or trimmed, it would be permitted. Lo Rabbanan for Lo Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbanan, if you want to square out with the Rabbanan, is below Gido Upislo Nami Tosef Sasura. Forget about the fact that he prunes the tree, trims the tree. Even if he didn't do so, the additional growth would be prohibited. And here the Mishnah is saying it's only also because it was Gido Upislo. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, Ikar Ilan Nami also. Right, the Mishnah is telling you that only that part which you prune and trim, which is the additional growth, that's forbidden, but the tree itself is mutter. According to Rabbi Yossi, according to Rav Ashi's interpretation of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, even the base of the tree is also. And the Gemara offers two answers. Number one, voice aim, I might tell you, Rabbanan. B-boys Ema Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. Let's go through it. E-boys Ema Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara starts with Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. And now we said that Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda prohibits even the base of the tree, even though the tree was not pruned or trimmed. We have an answer to that. Ki ka'am Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda below Gido Pislo Ikar Ilan Osu. When did Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda say that even if he doesn't prune the trim or trim the tree, the base of the tree is still prohibited bistama? That's only where the Mishtachaveh did not say explicitly, I am worshiping the base of the tree. Aval Gido Upislo Goli Adaiti de Tosefes Nichole. Bikar Elon Lo Nichole. Right? If he goes ahead and he prunes the tree or trims it, he reveals that he's only worshiping the additional growth. That's the object of his worship. But he is not interested in the base of the tree, the original part of the tree, for idolatry. And therefore, Rabbi Yossi says, and that in that sense, he's molded to the Chacham, that only the additional growth is forbidden. Ibais Ema Rabbanon. Or I could say that the Mishnah reflects the sheet of the Rabbanon. And even though we said that the Rabbanon asa the Tosefta, the additional growth, even though the tree was not pruned or trimmed, is Gido Pislo Itzrachle, the Mishnah wants to tell me a chiddush that even when one did go ahead and he pruned the tree or he trimmed the tree, Salke Daita, I would have thought, came on the Ovad Le Maisa Begufe, Ikar Ila Nami Litzar Kamashmal. If he did something to the tree itself and changed the form of the tree by doing this pruning, then the Ikar Elon is also awesome. I'm not sure if the Gemara is assuming psychologically that probably he's interested in worshiping the entire tree, including the base of the tree, called Mashmalan. But the Mishnah says that no, only the growth is forbidden and not the basic original tree. So the Gemara now, at the end of the day, successfully defended Rav Ashi's approach, according to which both Rabbanan and Rav Yossi agree that if a tree was planted without any intention for idolatry and was worshipped, the new growths are prohibited. Hence, Shmuel's prohibition of new growths is compatible with both Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi. Ezo Ashera, Mishnah says, Kol sheyesh tachtei avodas kol chavim. In other words, they took their idols and they placed them underneath this tree. The tree itself was not worshipped. It becomes an Asherah because of the halacha of an accessory to an idol, meaning the tree is protecting the idol. Rav Shimon Omer, Kol sha'ovdim osa. Only if they actually worship the tree does the tree get the status of an Asherah tree. If people worship not the actual tree, but rather the idol that's beneath the tree remains permitted. Because Rav Shimon holds that even if an idol was placed on a permanent basis under the tree, the idol still remains a separate entity and the tree does not become forbidden. A tree can become forbidden as an idol, but not as a mere accessory to an idol. Again, even though the tree protects the idol, so to speak, nevertheless the tree remains mutter, according to Rav Shimon. And therefore, Rav Shimon argues that whenever the word Asherah appears in the Torah, it's referring to a tree that was worshipped. The Tanna Kama, on the other hand, says the Asherah could either be the idol itself or the accessory to the idol because it's protecting the idol. Ezi Asherah. Okay. Maisa b'tzidon, be'ilan shahayu ovdenoso. There was a tree that the idol worshippers worshipped. Umitzo tachtov gal, and they found a heap underneath it. Omer lahem, Reb Shimon said, Bidku es hagal, check and see what's in this heap. Ubdaku, and they went ahead and they inspected it. Umitzo bo tzur, they found an image in it. Omer lahem, hoil v'letzura hem ovdin. Natir lahem es ha'ilan. We have proven now, by looking at the heap and inspecting it, the heap that's underneath this tree, and we found that that's where they have an image, then we could be matir the tree itself because they worshipped that idol that's underneath the tree in that heap beneath the tree, but they did not apparently worship the tree itself. The Gemara says, Ezi Asherah. What kind of question is the Mishnah asking? Ezi Asherah? Hanan Sholosh Asheras. The Mishnah delineates three categories of Asher Halchikam. This is what our Mishnah was asking. Shtayim l'divrei hakol, v'yachas machlokes Rabbi Shimon v'Rabbanan. In other words, the Mishnah is trying to determine which Asherah in the three categories delimited is the subject of the controversy between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanim. Ezi Asher shenechleku ba Reb Shimon v'Chachamim. And the answer is, says the Mishnah, Kol sheyesh tachtei avodas kol chavim. So they didn't worship the tree itself; they worshipped an idol that was beneath the tree. Reb Shimon Omer, therefore, Kol she'ovdin osa, that which they worship is asa. But if they didn't worship the tree itself, just the idol that's below the tree, then the tree itself is mutter. Now, Ezi Asherah Stam, right? The Mishnah had a category called Asherah Stam. Omar Rav, what's Asherah Stam? Kol shekomrim yoshim tachteh. So the priests of this idolatry will sit underneath this tree, but they're very careful not to eat from the fruits of the tree. Shmuel Amar, Afilu Omre Hani Tamri Lebei Nitzrfe Os. According to Shmuel, we don't need this demonstration by the fact that the Komrim are sitting beneath the tree, but it's sufficient if they make a declaration that the dates that'll grow on the tree will be brought to the temple of Natsrife, whatever that is, but some sort of an idol sanctuary. To Rami Beis Shikra, what they used to do is they made the beer out of dates, and on their idolatrous holiday they would drink the beer. So even though the dates are used, but since they're only consumed on an idolatrous holiday, therefore the tree is presumably an Asherah tree. Omar Amemar, Omru Sabi the Pumbedisa, the elders of Pumbedisa told me, Hilchas Shmuel, we paskin like Shmuel, and a tree whose fruits are consumed by the pagan priests on their idolatrous holidays considered Asherah. And Kolshkein, how much more so, a tree under whose shade the priests sit, and they don't even taste the fruit. Right? The chiddush here is that even if they taste the fruit, Shmuel says, and you might think, therefore, it's not an Asherah tree, they're only enjoying it for itself. No.